Welcome up, Phil. We'll see you later.
I have got a new fan because I was sweating so badly last week. Let me just... Oh, it's lovely. My own purse. Should we get one for each chair in the summer? Some of you are cold in here, you weirdos. So Kaylee's cold at the back. We've got a little heater on her. So take the loss. Yeah, that is the title of my message today. Take the loss. And before I get into that, it's been a big week in the Williams household. Very big week. It was the first full week of my littlest, my youngest of 4, because we've got 4 kids. The littlest, she's just turned 5. She had her first full week at school on her birthday, 5th birthday, 3rd of September. It was her school birthday day. And I look at her, she looks like she wouldn't be cheeky, didn't she? Oh, she's lovely. But big week. So big first full week. She started last week on a Wednesday, but it's her first full week. As you can imagine, if you've got kids, she's knackered. But that doesn't stop me, forcing her to also have her first jiu-jitsu class. So she has joined the jiu-jitsu team that my other kids go to. Apart from Skylar, she won't fight. She's a pacifist or something, I'm not sure. But she's not into the whole fighting thing. She's into playing with dollies, 3 of which are on the front row. I've put them all out to make it seems like they're listening to me. And they look a little scary. I'm not scared of many things, but dolls, if they blink, I'm out of it. And so, yeah, she's joined the jiu-jitsu club. And because my son, he's getting pretty good now. Give him another year, and he's going to be able to beat me, I reckon. But my daughter, Ava, as well, she is a machine. But some of you don't like jiu-jitsu. You don't like combat sports. It's all too rough, and you shouldn't be like as a Christian. But jiu-jitsu is the best out of them all because there's no punching in the head or anything. And so it's a great... what it's like chess for your body. That's what it's like. It is. It's really like chess to the body. Anyone who's done jiu-jitsu in here knows it's like chess to the body. You make a move, they have a counter move. It's so technical, and there's no punching in the face. Yeah, she can join MMA when she's 10. It is chess for your body, but the whole Brazilian jiu-jitsu thing is really changing. And like a few years ago, there was absolutely no money in it, even though some of the people are amazing, like it's the best in the world at fighting, just amazing athletes, and yet no money in it at all. Until really last year when things started to change, when Craig Jones, who's the second best in the world, he come up with a competition called CJI. And so it's the Craig Jones Invitational, and it had a sponsor behind it that no one knows who it is still. Probably someone does. But it was like £1 million prize. When you think that the winner used to get 10 grand in the biggest tournament before, that's quite a jump up. And so this is the second one. It was just a few weeks ago, and it's £1 million prize for the team that joined. But the best jiu-jitsu player, and they are called players, the best jiu-jitsu player in the world is known as Gordon Ryan, this dude here. He's like the Magnus Carlsen of the jiu-jitsu world. And for you guys who don't know chess, he's like the Gordon Ryan of the... he's like the Magnus Carlsen... No, he's like the Gordon Ryan of the chess world. Hold on, let's got that back to front. But he's the master, is what I'm saying. He's the master at jiu-jitsu. He's like leaps ahead of anyone else. Amazing dude. But he is part of the best club in the world as well, called... Not Blue Wave, that's our club, called New Wave. But this dude refused to go to the tournament. He refused to go to it. His teammates went, but he refused to go to it. And because he said before, it won't be fair. This tournament will not be fair. I'm not going to that tournament. Why? Well, because the organising people are from the second best team in the world, and Craig Jones being the second best person in the world, called B Team, funny enough. Named themselves B Team, which I think is hilarious. And so he thought, it's not going to be fair because this team are organising it. They've got all the funds for it. They're doing the rule set for it. They're getting all the refs for it. It's not going to be a fair fight. And the format was really interesting as well. They'd done what we call quintets. And so there was 8 teams. There's 4 there, but there's 8 teams in the tournament, and you have 5 people in a team, and it's basically with a fight, and winner stays on. So if you beat a player, the next one comes on the mat. You have a little rest, and you start again. So effectively, you could just... one guy could win everything, and the other 4 just sit there going, oh, don't get to go on. And so this is the format, and yet because it's so technical, when you got to the final, it's so technical that the 2 people in the final, they just drew every single match because it is like chess for the body. They drew every single match in terms of no one tapped out. There might have been a points difference, but this is called a quintet. And so in the end, in the final, guess who was there? B Team and New Wave. Them two, the first best team, the second best team, even without the best player in the world. And it was like a chess match. And the scores at the end, when they looked at the judges' scorecards, was 47-47. It was a draw. So it was like, oh, what are we going to do with that? Split the money. And no, what they did, there's a particular rule in one of the subsets of the rules. It was like whoever won the last match on points ends up winning. And you might be surprised to hear that B Team happened to win that, and they won £1 million prize for their team. So they organised it and won the money for it too. Sounds like a bit of conflict of interest. But what happened was this guy, Gordon Ryan, for days afterwards, and still today, I believe, on social media, every platform possible, was just banging on about it. How unfair it was, how they changed the rules last minute, no one knew about it. And there was a big fight on social media back and forth. They're like, no, here's all the video evidence of us giving the rules beforehand. And then it's like, oh no. And then the person who'd sponsored said, oh, I'll tell you what, I'll give them £1 million as well, because there was a bit of a misunderstanding perhaps. And then he went, actually, no, there's video evidence. No, you're not having the £1 million. Oh, that would have sucked, wouldn't it? When you think, oh yeah, we get the million anyway. And then it was taken away from you because this guy wouldn't shut up. And he banged on about it. So even though he was not in the actual fight, I want you to think about this. He was not in the actual fight. He, after the fight is over and decided, still wants to continue the fight. And just a little side note, he maybe has got a point. Maybe he's got a point, but maybe it's unfair. But I want you to think about this. Is that always a good reason to keep fighting when you've lost something? Just because something was unfair. Is that always a reason to keep fighting when you've lost something? And today I want to float this idea, and it's not really mine. It's this, is if you take the loss now, you'll win in the end. Is if you take the loss now, you'll win in the end. And if you've ever done any sports at all, you know this phrase of taking the loss. And it means you don't win every time. You know, we're bringing children up these days to say they can win at everything all the time. But you can't win all the time in the game of life, and you can't even in the game of sports. You can't win every game. You can't even win every decision on the pitch. And you have to accept it, learn from it, and move on. It's like, take the loss. Just take the loss, even if it was unfair. And I grew up playing rugby, played rugby 20 years, and what I love about rugby, other than just smashing into people, what I love about rugby is the respect for the referee. I love it. He can make the worst call. Everyone on the pitch knows, everyone in the crowd knows, and the rugby players go, yes, sir, and they come back 10 metres. And if you even argue, even if you approach the ref and you're not the captain, and you say, oh, come on, ref, they go, another 10 metres, penalty back this way. And that's the culture of the game. There's a culture of take the loss. There's a culture of take the loss unless you play for certain teams. Sometimes they don't take the loss so well. But there's a culture of taking the loss, even if you're right, even if it's fair. I got penalised loads when I was playing for things like handling on the floor, and I'm like, I'm well within the rules to do this. And you've made a bad judgment call. And instead of me writing an essay or a dossier or a 3-point presentation to the ref and telling him why he's wrong, I had to make the decision, I'm just going to take the loss and carry on playing. Why am I talking about this? Because a completely different culture in, like, let's say, I don't know, let's just pick a sport randomly, football. That's soccer for you Americans. It's the real name for it, but whatever. Footballers, that's the thing I can't stand about football. I actually like the game, I like playing the game, but I hate when footballers run up on a ref and shout in his face and all that sort of stuff. And don't we look at them sometimes and think, you're such a child. What are you doing? There's lots of millions of dollars in it and millions of pounds, but whatever. But you're behaving like a child. Like something's gone not your way, unfair, and you're screaming about it. And yet sometimes this is how we act in our life. We act like the footballer instead of the rugby player. Someone wrongs us, and instead of carrying on with the game or walking off the field and moving on, we keep replaying the game. And plot how to make them pay. But you see, I want to argue that life isn't football. Life isn't like rugby. It's not even like checkers. It's more like chess. And sometimes the smartest move is losing a piece and accepting that loss to win the game. And so I'm going to ask you the question about you today. Where in your chess game of life are you wanting, and this is the word I'm using today, revenge? Where are you wanting revenge? And some of you are like, that's not me, switch off, because I don't have them sorts of feelings. We'll get into that. I don't have that sort of, that's like bad people, that's evil people, that thought of revenge. And I want to talk about the pull of revenge. This pull of revenge that is in actually probably nearly all of us. And it's sad that sometimes we're willing to lose the war to win a battle. Can I tell you, when you're fighting in marriage, if you think you win at any of that, you're deluded. If you win at that, you often lose at that. Amen? All the blokes just nodded. I wish I had a camera pointing this way. But there's a guy called Kimmel, and his research shows that 95% of people, think about this, 95% of people, that's most people in the room, feel the urge for revenge. And then you're like, oh, that's different. That's just thinking it and feeling it. I never do it. The stats say that only 20% of people enact any form of revenge against someone. That only 20%, but 95% of people have it in them as a thing. And it's funny because some of us switch off and be like, that's not me. But revenge comes in such a wide scale of actions, or even inactions, or shapes and sizes. It goes from full-scale war, and I mean full-scale war. Countries have gone to war for revenge. In fact, most of the modern wars are about, you done something to us, so we're going to do this thing back to you, because that makes it fair. That's justice. That is what should happen. And we fight backward and forward, and we can't remember where it even started, because we weren't even around. But it goes from that massive scale war to petty little slights. Petty little, small, subtle things. You know, bending the truth to make someone look bad at work. No one's done that in here, right? Ever? No. Or spreading gossip to undercut a friend. Or the silent treatment at home. Or freezing someone out. Or even just, here we go, I'll bring the threshold right down. Even just hoping someone gets what's coming to them. Even just hoping someone gets what's coming to them. They've done all these things, and I'd never do anything. I don't even think anything about it. I don't even plot anything, or I'm just waiting for one day for the reaping to come. They've done their sowing, and I want to have popcorn on the front row. You see, Kimmel's research says that 80% of people don't enact revenge, but I want to tell you, the thoughts themselves are destructive. Even that, not just the enacting of it, that is highly destructive. But even the thoughts and the process in our brain is highly destructive, and they eat at us. Even if you never lift a finger against someone who's done something against you, whether that's a major thing in major war, or that person who said that thing about you that hurt your feelings one day. So I want you to think about this. Even if you've never taken revenge with your hands, let's say, you've probably still taken it in your head. And can I tell you, that's enough to poison your peace. It really is. So the key question today is, I guess this is, what does real justice look like? And who decides it? Because we justify our own actions, our own thoughts, our own feelings when something bad happens to somebody else that's got it coming. But what does real justice look like, and who decides it? Let's read from Romans 12:17. Let's get in there. It says this, and we love this scripture. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Hold on. No, that's what justice is, isn't it? Equaling the score. That's what it is. They've done something bad. We're allowed to do something bad to them to make it even and a draw. That's fair. That's justice. Is it? Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And it says this. I love this about Paul writing this. It says, if at all possible, because it might not be possible, but if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, your actions, your thoughts, your attitudes, live at peace with everyone. If at all possible, try and do that. But he understands it's not always possible. But it says this, do not take revenge. My dear friends, check this. But leave room for God's wrath. Leave room for God's wrath. You don't need to get on board with that. It says, for it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. And I guess my first point is this, that revenge feels right, but always backfires. Revenge always feels right, but always backfires. We read last week about some of David's shenanigans in his Act 2 of life, let's say, when he had it all going on and King Saul was trying to kill him. And I thought I'd follow on the theme today and pick up the story right in the middle where King Saul is trying to kill David, who was anointed to be king, because he hated him, he was jealous of him. People were like celebrating David, and he's killed tens of thousands, but Saul's only killed a few hundred people. He's a bit rubbish. And this jealousy built up, this hurt built up to the point where Saul wanted revenge on that assault of feeling. Because can I tell you, David hadn't even done anything wrong. I want you to think about it. David hadn't done anything wrong. And yet Saul perceived an insult, perceived a threat. And so then felt justified. He thought he was going to come and take his throne. So he felt justified to kill him to protect himself. And we do this in our mind. We build all these patterns and defenses and walls around us that justify our actions or our attitudes towards somebody else because we perceive something from them that hurts or challenges us or makes us look silly. Let's pick up the story, 1 Samuel 24, 1-7. It says this, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, someone come and let him know, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. That's what I say. It's like a French Skywalker. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. And it says this, he came to the sheep's pen along the way. A cave was there. And Saul went in to relieve himself. So he needed the loo. He's like, wait here, fellas. I'm just popping to the loo. Grab me a Starbucks. I'll be back in 5. And it says David and his men were far back in the cave. They've already gone in. They're sort of resting up in this cave. And so Saul's gone in alone into the cave to go and have a wee or whatever else he's doing. I don't know what number, it doesn't say. It doesn't say verse 2 or anything. And it says this. Actually, it is verse 2, funny enough. Verse 3. And the men said, so Saul's come in and he's having a wee or he's crouched down. Who knows? You can paint the picture in your own mind. And it says this, David's men said to him, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Because God had said that to David. I'm going to give your enemy into your hand for you to do whatever you want with. And his men around him going, this is the time. Look at him, he's right there. Get him, David. Like a schoolyard brawl. Get him. Go and get him. How embarrassing to a time to get got. That's the way. It says, then David crept up unnoticed. And what he did was cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He just cut a corner of the robe off. Verse 5 says, afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. This guy's trying to kill him. And David cut off a bit of robe, snuck back, got to his men, and then thought, I shouldn't have even done that. That is an abuse. I should not be doing that to my king. Think about that. Would you be like that? He said to them, the Lord forbid me that I should do such a thing to my master. The Lord's anointed. He recognized that even though he's next in line, that this person is in authority over him and he shouldn't be trying to harm him in any way or make him look silly. It says, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. And verse 7 says this, with these words, David sharply rebuked his men. So he was like, nobody touches him. We don't do this. He rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. He didn't even know they were in there. And so think about this. Saul was hunting him unjustly, really unjustly. But to Saul, it was justified. And he was looking for justice and revenge. And David, if in many ways, in the world's eyes, even in his own eyes perhaps, or even in the men's eyes or the kingdom's eyes, had every reason to even the score or to protect himself or to do something to make it right. But he chose restraint. And I love it. Notice that God said, deal with him how you wish. I'm going to put your enemy in your hand. You're going to be able to. You're going to be in a position to do something bad on top to even the score. I'm going to give him into your hand, and you do what you want. He's almost given permission. God's saying, You can do what you want. You want to kill him? Go ahead. See what happens. And like I said, in everybody's eyes, maybe he would have been justified, but I can bet you my bottom dollar that if he'd killed Saul, the decision would have backfired on David. I can almost guarantee that. Because even socially amongst his own men, it'd be like, oh, you're that sort of dude who'll stab a guy in the back when you disagree, when you politically have different views, when you think the country should be run in different ways. You'll be willing to stab me in the back. Can I tell you the ramifications of doing that action? And even spiritually undermining God's choice. You know, God chose him because he knew what David's heart was like. He would be someone who could have his enemy in his hands and still say, that's not my job. That's why God anointed him, because he knew what he was like. Instead, David chose to rise above it. And I put it like this in my notes. Revenge, even in your mind or in the little things of just trying to socially play the workplace or your family or that friend, revenge is like sacrificing your queen just to take their pawn. If you don't know chess, I can't help you. Giving away the powerful piece, the really strong stuff that's going to help you win later, just to get a little win, just to get a tick, just to get a feeling good. Putting yourself above somebody else. It's satisfying for a moment. Even in chess it is, if you've got chess players in here. Just taking even one piece, it's like, yeah, gotcha. Yes, but you've sacrificed your queen, you idiot. What you've done is sabotage your whole strategy in the game of chess, and it's the same in life. When we seek them, even them small amounts of revenge, just taking the pawns when we can, we sabotage our whole strategy to win in life, and I mean the biggest sense of winning in life. But many of you in the room, you don't do the enacting. You're not the 20%. I'd probably guess that most of us aren't in that 20%. There might be one or two. I won't point at them. And you know why. You'd be one of them, by the way. Oh, dear. But even though most of us wouldn't enact it, even statistically, that's likely most of us wouldn't enact it, the fact that we take revenge in our head, and possibly because we know the Christian game, you can't be seen to do these things because someone would be able to measure that action against you. But inside, revenge is ready to celebrate the other person when they lose. Can I tell you, that's not winning. When you're ready in your mind to celebrate somebody else's loss, you'd never enact revenge, but you'd really like them things to happen to them. And when they happen to them, secretly you're smiling inside. Can I tell you, that's not winning. That really is not winning. In fact, that's losing again. You lost once in the first round, and you've now lost in round 2. You're losing the game. You just don't know it. And you might even say, yeah, but I've never even said anything bad about that person. I hate that person inside, but I've never even said anything bad. But if they got hit by a bus, you wouldn't mind. Got people in your world like that? If they got hit by a bus, I'm not going to mind. Might even just have a little bit of a, Am I bringing the threshold down enough to include most of us in the room? Maybe some of you are like, that's a bit harsh. I wouldn't do that. What about if they lost their business or their job? Would that make you smile a little inside? Because when you worked there, they were an idiot. Or would you have a little bit of a glow when their relationship breaks down? Because you knew from the beginning that they were someone who was poisonous and they'd done things to you and other people, and it's their reaping time, and I can celebrate that because I haven't done anything or even thought anything bad, but I like the fact that something's happening to you. They deserve it. Can I tell you, you haven't taken the loss, by the way. You haven't taken the loss and moved on. You've been holding that loss ready for that moment, for celebration when they lose as big as you, or even hopefully, if possible, if at all possible, that they lose greater than you did in that moment. You're hoping that they lose as big as you did, so it's what? Fair. So it feels fair, so it feels just, so there's justice. But in trying to, the way I put it, in trying to get a draw, you end up losing more. That in trying to get a draw, you end up losing more. But Phil, they took everything from me. That might be true. You know, I know some horrific stories, even within our own church, but in the wider church in Thetford, and family members that I've got that have just been hurt on a level that I can't even comprehend, if I'm honest. And you could argue they took everything from me. I'm justified to even do these things. I'm definitely justified to feel these things. I'd say, are you? You might say, I want justice. I'd say, do you? Or do you want payback? Do you want to pay back the pain that was caused, or the social status chunk they took out of you by doing that thing or saying that thing? Because revenge looks like winning in the moment. I think that's why we do it. That's why people enact revenge on the big scale or on the small scale, because in their moments it feels good. It feels good to get revenge. But it always leaves you losing in the long run. And so what do we do instead? This thing, I think, is worth thinking about, is that God's justice is better than our payback. That God's justice is better than our payback. Whatever that looks like on your scale of revenge and payback, whether it's tiny little, almost immeasurable things in your mind to massive things that you might have even done in the past. God's justice is better than our payback. And so I want you to bring you back to that story with David and Saul in that cave. After cutting off his robe, he follows Saul out of the cave. Saul goes back down to his men, and David and his men are stood on the hill further enough away that they could run if needed. And he basically says to Saul, "Oi, excuse me, sir." He said, "I could have killed you. Look at your coat." And it's like, oh. And he realized that David had been there and could have taken his life easily. And it says in 1 Samuel 24:12, hopefully we got it, says this, that David said, "May the Lord judge between you and me." David's not saying, I'm not making this judgment decision. I'm not trying to get justice here. I'm saying, may the Lord judge between you and me, who's doing things right. And may the Lord avenge the wrongs you've done to me. Not me, he says, but my hand will not touch you. He was saying it to Saul. He was saying it to his men. He was perhaps even saying it to himself and to God. No matter what you've done to me or what you're going to do to me, I will not avenge this. I'm not going to have revenge. I'm not going to touch you. Look, I'm proving it. I could have. That's why David went on to be an amazing king for the whole kingdom. It's because he had that sort of character. Do we? You see, I think our justice is sometimes just retaliation, where God's justice is righteousness, but it's also restoration. See, I think God's justice is more about restoring things back to health and goodness than it is about evening the score. Justice isn't about 1-1, keeping the score level all the time, and that's fair now. It's about restoring what was once complete. In a marriage, there's no point keeping score where you said that thing, I did that thing, you done that, and now we're 4-4. That means we're all right. Can I tell that's not winning, is it? It's when it's 7-2 and both agree we want to restore this no matter what the score is. That's God's form of justice. So I'm asking you, are you seeking justice with that person at work, with that family member, with that person who hurt you, that ex? Or are you just seeking payback with a prettier name? Because sometimes I think we need to sacrifice our revenge so God can provide justice. And, you know, when you step back from payback, you step into God's protection. Like when you decide, like David did, he said, I'm not going to do this. I'm stepping back from my payback, and I'm going to allow God to protect me and do the business. When we do that, can I tell you, nobody fights on your behalf like God does. He's better at it than you. He's better at it than me. I'm like, if you're in a street fight, I'm a good chap to have around. Like, I quite like a tussle, right? I've been punched in the head a lot. I don't go down easy. You want me on your team. I'm putting it that way. But can I tell you, even more, do you want Jesus on your team? Do you want God fighting your battle for you rather than you? But there's a deeper reason we can take the loss, and that's this, that Jesus shows us the power of taking the loss. And this is probably one of the most famous scriptures in the New Testament, in Matthew 5. If you don't know Matthew 5 and you never read your Bible a lot, this is a great place to start, honestly. And it says this, Jesus is talking to a load of people and he said this, you have heard that it was said, eye for eye. Yeah, we know that. An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's fair. If someone does that thing to you, you're allowed to do it back to them. In many cases, in law, we're still allowed to do that. If someone does something, you're allowed to up to a certain line, not past it, because that's not reasonable force, but right up to the line, you're allowed to do it. That's an eye for an eye. That's justice. But Jesus says, you've heard this said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. What? That sounds ridiculous. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And I've actually done that in rugby before. I've been punched in the head. And can I tell you, there's nothing like it, like from a guy's point of view, if you punch someone and they just smile at you, you think, uh-oh. But that's not the motivation behind what Jesus is talking about. All right? Completely different end of the spectrum. He says, turn also the other cheek in verse 40. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And it goes on, doubles down, goes a layer deeper. You've heard that it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Can I tell you, that feels normal. That feels natural in our human nature, is to love our friends, the people we love, the people who are good with us, and to hate our enemy. And that is why revenge feels good, because it's naturally built within most of us. But he says, you've heard it said, this is like how we're taught, and this is normal in our culture, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, what? Love your enemies. That doesn't sound like revenge. That doesn't sound like even being fair. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Whether that's in major war scenarios, whether that's just someone who said something that keeps biting at you. Pray for those who persecute you. Check this, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. This is how children of God deal with things. This is how we behave. And I like it. It should say this is how mature children of God behave. If you're actually a child of God and following him as opposed to just turning up in church, then this is how we are to live our life. And it says he causes his sun to rise on evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. But check this, verse 46 says this. If you love those who love you, check it, what reward will you get? Jesus is like, that's easy. Loving the people who love you, that's well easy. And some of you are thinking, you don't know my family. Loving the people who love me is the hardest thing in the world. Can I tell you, no, it's not. It might be complicated and difficult sometimes. But Jesus calls us to an even higher standard. Not just to love the people who love us, but love the people who don't love us. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? What will you win in this game of life? What are you going to win at that? That's not even you're not even playing. You've got nothing to win there. There is no reward. It says this, are not even the tax collectors doing that? You know, if we take revenge to get even, to draw, we lose. But if we take the loss, we win and we get rewarded. And I believe we'll probably be rewarded on earth, but also in heaven as well. When we take the loss and we just take the loss, we actually win in the end. That God will reward us for that. In heaven, but I also believe on earth. Even on earth, just in your biochemistry. You know, science actually backs this up. When you plot revenge, when you're just thinking in your head, you know, you've had a hard week and your boss is an absolute muppet and you're just plotting in your head about, oh, if they were there and I'd done this, I should have said that. And ever had them conversations? I should have said that. Oh, that line just come to me. Why didn't I say that? Some of you are laughing. This is deep. All of you are like it. Not me, I've never done it. I don't, because I have 9 of them conversations going on at the same time. I would have said this, I would have done that. I even plot it out on a graph. No, I don't. But when you plot revenge, the reward center of your brain, the bit that goes, this is nice, I like this is wee, lights up like you've just won the lottery. Not even when you take revenge, when you plot it. They've scanned people, and when you're thinking about this sort of thing, it actually lights up the reward centers. That's why it feels good. Your brain's going, yeah, more of this, sugar, It feels good for a minute, but just like junk food or an addictive drug that lights up the same parts of the brain, the crash comes quick and you're left emptier than you were before. Just like when you eat at McDonald's, 2 hours later you feel like rubbish and you're hungrier than when you started. And it's no different with this enacting revenge or thinking on it. It feels good in the moment, but you're actually setting yourself up to lose probably just in a few hours' time. Definitely in days, weeks, months, and I've seen it probably over decades. But here's what's good. When you forgive, a whole different part of the brain activates. The part that actually is tied to peace in our brain and that's tied to empathy and long-term healing. And forgiveness literally quiets the stress signals in your brain. Them stress signals that are normal, that are actually healthy in some regard, but the ones that are going off too much because of this sort of type of thinking. When you forgive and actually forgive and have even, and they've studied this, even just forgiving thoughts, like the notion of forgiving, activates them parts of your brain to bring peace that's beyond understanding, that comes and just transcends our understanding of how this should even work. How can I forgive someone of something they've done something so bad? And yet, even when we just think about that prospect, our brain chemistry has changed. You see, revenge destroys us where forgiveness frees us. And I put it like this: revenge lights up the brain for a moment, but forgiveness rewires it for a lifetime. It is. That's how it works. Is that revenge lights up the brain in a moment, and it's powerful, just like sugar for some people, or alcohol, or drug, whatever the thing tickles you, that brings you pleasure. Revenge, or the thought of it, or the thought of someone else's demise, or the celebration when it happens, feels great for a moment, but it makes you lose in the long run. But forgiveness rewires the brain for a lifetime. And so, what looked like Jesus losing on Friday turned into the greatest victory on Sunday. So, I want to say, what if your loss, let's put it in inverted commas, is actually God's set up for something greater? Just like we were talking about last week. The act 2 of your life, the struggle, the loss is actually the part that's required to get to your act 3, for your victory, to actually win the game, the chess game of your life, let's say. On the cross, Jesus is bleeding out, and it looked like Jesus had lost his king. He was the king. In the chess game of his life, it looked like the disciples had lost their king, but really it was checkmate on sin and death. In that moment where they looked like it was loss, it was actually a win. And Jesus took the loss for every piece on the board, for every single one of us, so that you and I could win the game that we could never win by ourselves. And I've put it like this: if Jesus could take the loss for us, then surely we can take the loss for him. Because that's what's asked of us, is to take the loss on a regular basis for his sake, but also for our own. And so what does that look like? How do we take the loss? Well, I think the first thing is to recognize revenge thoughts for what they are. If you have anything going on like that in the week, in the future, or something from your past now that you've been carrying for a long time, is recognize those thoughts. Recognize that it's revenge, and recognize for what they are is a craving that will never, ever be satisfied, an itch, a scratch that you'll never feel better about. And then what we need to do is replace that bitterness with forgiveness and release the outcome. This is important. Release the outcome to God's timing and justice. Because often we're happy for God to do his thing, but it's usually not on our schedule. We want him to hurry up, but we need to release it to him. Let the sowing and reaping mechanism happen, and not be waiting on the sideline with popcorn, ready to celebrate when someone else gets what's coming to them. And so I finish with this question: what score are you still keeping that God is asking you to erase? What score are you keeping that God's asking you to erase? What would change in our life if in every little offense we trained ourselves to say, I'll take the loss because I know in Christ I've already won the game. Because life isn't about winning every move. Like on a chessboard, it's not about winning every move. It's about trusting the master, the chess master of who is Jesus, and who already called checkmate on sin and death and revenge. So I encourage us to do this. Take the loss now. Trust in God's justice, and we'll win in the end. Amen. Let's pray. Father, I just thank you for the difficult